What is going on, everybody? This is your boy, Danyol Jaye, and I am representing Trans Connections Outreach Specialist for Trans Connections, and we are live at 5, well, technically 5:01, but that's okay because we're here. We are live right here on the APLA Health Prevention Department page, and we have an amazing show for you today. We have an amazing conversation, amazing panel. I know I use the word amazing a lot. It's okay because, I mean, what other words are there? Amazing, awesome, incredible, all of that. So today we are going to be talking about defining femininity. And a few months ago, I teamed up with a wonderful individual who is a part of a wonderful organization. I'm going to bring them on soon. And we had a conversation about allowing and creating space for people to ask questions to the trans community. And we decided that it would be best, instead of having a full spectrum trans panel, if we broke it up into sections and kind of defined and had the conversations regarding these different identities. And so we did one in February where we defined masculinity, and we talked about trans masculine individuals, trans men, and things of that nature. And today, even in the midst of quarantine, honey, because Miss Rona, she's not gonna stop a corn, and she's not gonna stop our business, okay? But today we are going to talk about defining femininity. And I have 3 amazing trans feminine individuals that are going to be part of this panel. But before I do that, I want to introduce a wonderful man who is, I don't know all that I can say about this individual. They're just uber intelligent. They're uber charismatic. They are just have a wonderful heart for the community and the work that they do. They are a co-founder of an organization called Invisible Men, which supports and services the trans masculine community, which we know in the large scheme of transness, that is something that we need more of. So without further ado, I want to introduce to some, reintroduce to others, the awesome and amazing Mr. Luckie Alexander.
Hey, Daniel J, how are you? And hey to everyone else.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's a little hot today, but
I mean, it's more than a little, okay? It's
right.
More than a little. Like I'm in this little ensemble, like, okay, I just want to be naked. It's hot. So just how are you doing? First of all, I want to say thank you so much for doing this panel. Obviously, you were on TCTV not too long ago, and we were discussing you specifically and Invisible Men, and you are now back with us to help me facilitate this conversation. So how have you been?
I have been fantastic. You know, this whole quarantine thing sometimes gets to me, but you know, you got to keep your head up and keep it pushing. So I'm about it.
Okay. So I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get these panelists on here, and Luckie is going to introduce our first panelist, which is the amazing Gia Ryan. Do you have anything to say about Miss Gia? Outside of the fact that she's absolutely gorgeous, like I'm jealous.
Well, I've worked with Gia for many years on the Trans Advisory Council. She's also a part of the LA Trans Chorus or Trans Choir, depending on where you are. She does a lot in the community. She's fantastic, and I absolutely adore her. She's like a little sister. So yes.
Well, let's bring on Miss Gia. Hi, Gia. Uh-oh, you're muted, boo. You are muted.
I am muted.
Now you are muted. There you go.
This feminine voice will not be stifled. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Gia Ryan. I use she, her, hers, or they, them, their pronouns.
Awesome sauce. Well, thank you so much, Gia, for being here. Next up, we have Miss Blossom C. Brown. What you got for us in regards to Miss Blossom? Come on,
well, Blossom.
You better give life.
Blossom also is like a little sister. She does a lot of fantastic work in the community. She's working with, she's worked with the LGBT Center and so many other things. She was part of the big debate when they had debate when the world was open, the Democratic debate. And so Blossom definitely shows up in our community in so many different ways. And as well, she shows up for trans men in particular in so many different ways. So definitely Blossom is a fantastic person.
And welcome, Blossom. How are you doing?
Hi, happy Tuesday, everybody.
Happy Tuesday. Yeah, you better come through with this summer dress. See, I want to be in that outfit.
It's hot outside.
Oh my God. I feel like I just see that's the outfit that I need. The spaghetti straps and all that goodness and wonderfulness.
Yes.
want to thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And last but certainly not least, now I have heard many things about our next guest, and I am meeting her for the first time tonight. But I'm a little nervous, honey, because I mean, just her presence, even in a virtual space, just demands like I am here, you will hear me, and I have things to say and contribute. And it is none other than Miss Kim Watson. What do you have to say about Miss Kim Watson?
Miss Kim Watson is another incredible trans woman that I absolutely adore. She's one of my best friends, and she's done a lot of really good work around the Trans March. She worked with me last year on the Trans March as well. She's got CK Life out there in New York, and she's doing a lot of really fantastic work for trans folks out there in New York.
Awesome sauce. Well, let's bring on Miss Kim Watson. Hello, lovely. Oh my God, I'm giggling. That's a good thing.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Hey guys and girls, and how are you? My name is Kim Watson. I'm here from New York City. I don't know. Identify pronouns she, her, and queen. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just here handling things as I stride through this Corona kind of situation. Yeah.
Well, Miss Kim Watson, I want to say thank you so much. All of you, Blossom, Gia, Miss Kim, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. As you know, and I'm going to lead with this. For those watching who don't already know me, so I am a cisgender ally. I'm a gay cisgender man working for a trans program. I work for Trans Connections. I'm the outreach specialist there under the APLA house. And even though this is not my experience, living a trans experience is not my experience to own, working with our clients, being in the community, meeting wonderful individuals such as yourself, we all know that there's a lot of work to be done with the trans community, in the trans community, and for the trans community, specifically when it comes to visibility, when it comes to monetary opportunities like jobs, and just creating, generating funds to support the community. And so tonight, what I want to really focus on is the trans feminine side of that conversation. And my first question, which is, it was a little bit of a teaser question, just to warm you guys up. I don't want to get total interviewer on y'all, make you feel like you're on The View. But my first question, and we can start with whomever would like to go first. My first question is, navigating this world as a trans feminine individual, as a trans woman, what has been the biggest challenge for you within the actual trans community?
So I'm hearing two things in that question. What is our experience navigating the world as a trans person versus navigating our own community?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Ooh, wow. Ladies, y'all got some answers. I can speak on my experience if that's all right. So I think one of the hardest challenges in navigating the world is conformity to expectations of what femininity is in a patriarchal stance, right? We live in a culture that's capitalist and patriarchal. And so economic status, access, and equity are all issues that plague the trans community, particularly the trans feminine people of color. And so I think access and accessibility to different modalities of economic stability and affirmation are difficult for us. I think in our own community, we often project a level of standards of passability and what binary means in our own community. So I think those are some challenges that I've met.
Thank you, Gia. Blossom, Miss Kim.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of crazy because, I come from a much more conservative place, like being born and raised in the South, and there weren't like there were trans people, but we were so scattered out. So I kind of navigated more with the hetero cis community, basically, as a trans person. And I will say, especially like going through college and being like the only trans person, it's very difficult being trans and also just being a woman in general. It's really, really difficult because you face the amount of misogyny that you face. It's very, very difficult. And sometimes it's even more difficult when you face it within your own community. And, you know, you always expect better in your community, but that isn't always the case. And, you know, coming out here to California, I've been out here almost 4 years now. And, you know, being able to find a trans community, it was really, really refreshing for me. But I will say, just in my everyday life as a trans woman, trans femme, or whatnot, it's really, really difficult because I feel like I'm always having to fight for my place at the table just to be heard. I feel like it's constant battling, it's constant fighting each and every single day. And it's like whenever I get up out of bed, I feel like I have to have this war mask on, you know, just to get ready for the day. Because if I don't speak words into power, people won't hear me. They refuse to hear me. So it's just, it's difficult. I will say that.
Thank you so much, Blossom. Miss Kim.
Thank you. Thank you. So, navigating as first and foremost, thank you again. I don't when I walk into society, I don't walk into society thinking or putting out there, oh, hey, I'm trans. I don't either live stealth. However, being in society and working and stuff like this, and coming from a Caribbean background, coming from Barbados, and I know a lot of people don't talk about that because we talk about immigrants and stuff like that, but we look at the Latinos and the Latinx and other folks from different Caribbean countries. And me, as I came from the drag queen era, so there's or the transsexual era and hermaphrodite era, which is intersex now. So as a older woman coming from that era, coming into society, I've already battled a lot of stuff in the Caribbean country, and then to come to the US and then see the same battle is happening here, and then to take up a point. And you know, that's coming from that society and living within the cis heteronormative world and finding jobs and stuff like that, and coming here and reliving that. It the difficulty that I see in individuals, I had to pop in to be to lead, to let folks know that this discrimination and all this stuff been happening years ago. However, being in the community as the woman I am, and not coming out from being a gay man, but with my femininity, I have navigated through the community that some may like me and some may don't. And I've got to that point and dealing with my traumas and my anxiety and stuff like that. And walking out my door, I hear Blossom walking out my door, waking up in the morning. I for a while I used to fight and to be at that table. However, I've turned around. I built my table. And I've selected who guests supposed to come at my table. So when it comes to authority, I take over. I am not interested in who's in the room that have anything bad to say about me, because those are my PRs. Anyone that have anything good to say about me, they are continue to build my foundation. So navigating that process within community and society, I had to deal with the pros and cons, and I'll live with it. However, this is just me. I'm just a organic individual. I love life. So yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, Kim. I just want to echo on that. Like, looking around this panel, you know, we're people of cultural experience. And when we talk about the system that we're navigating, we have to acknowledge that we are in an American white-centered culture. And I'm a first-generation person of a Mexican and Filipino background. And these cultural differences play a part with how you present yourself and your femininity. And, you know, our cultures have different standards of what feminine even is, as opposed to this nuclear patriarchal American system. So I definitely want to acknowledge and echo that those are some issues that off the bat we come with even greater challenges navigating the art cultures.
Thank you, Gia, for that. Kim, you mentioned something in your response that I kind of want to kind of leads into my next question. And Lucky, I would love to also have your input on this question as well. When we talk about femininity, when we talk about masculinity, when we talk about mannerisms, period, or presentations, there are these societal norms of this is what this equals and this is what this equals. And Kim, you made a statement, you know, leaving being this gay man necessarily and entering into being a trans woman, but still holding on to this femininity, still exploring and discovering this femininity. What has that kind of journey been like? Like, has femininity, the definition of femininity for each of you, has that changed now that you live and navigate life as a, you know, as who you are as a woman, as a trans woman? Are there certain things that have stayed the same in your definition of femininity post transition?
Well, actually, there's a difference between an effeminate man and a gay man. And why I say that is that I was never, acknowledged to the fact of being gay. I've always acknowledged to the fact of being a sissy or being a bati man or anything of that nature. So when we talk about being gay, I'm attracted to masculinity and having an overbalance of female hormones. Coming from that era and coming into me being who I am, I always recognize myself as the woman I am from the age of 11 plus. So, you know, and my mom gave me my first hormones. You would never believe that a Caribbean mom would give you a first hormone after taking you to the doctor and realizing the medical society is telling you there's nothing you can do with that child, you know, that kind of thing. So coming from being effeminate, I've always held on to my femininity and always lived for myself, and I know what I needed in life. I never think about, oh, where do I stand on the acronyms of the LGBT? I knew from Jump Street, I never stood on that acronym. The LGBT are my allies, and I know who I am.
Thank you so much for that. Do anyone else have any thoughts on the question as far as like how you defined femininity before versus how you define it now?
For me, I define it as a little bit more fluid, as a matter of fact. You know, I kind of just, you know, everybody has feminine energy. Everyone has masculine energy. Like, that's just something that we all have. And it's all about like what you're willing to tap into. And it's really, really interesting because I have this conversation all the time with friends, you know, transitioning from one thing to the other. You know, this particular gender is supposed to be the protector, and this particular gender is supposed to be the nurturer. And the thing is, for me, I had to learn to not be the protector so much, but learning how to nurture a little bit. And now I'm just trying to find balance between the two. But as time has gone on, I've really kind of gotten away from that type of mentality of just it being just that too, because femininity is beautiful. Femininity is fluid. I think femininity appears in so many different things in, you know, every day. And so I don't really like the one definition of what femininity is. I don't think it's right to police someone's femininity. Because guess what? We're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. You know, Kim was just talking about a Barbados background, and you know, Gia was talking about Mexican and Filipino background. And I come from the dirty South. I come from like the black dirt road country in the woods with the deers and everything kind of background. And, you know, I'm very, very proud of that. You know, again, coming from the state where Jim Crow was the last state to even outlaw it, you know, coming and being born and raised in Mississippi, the birthplace of blues, I'm proud of that. Despite its terrible, painful history, because that's what made me. That's what made me. My ancestors were down there getting sprayed by water hoses. You know, I'm so proud to come from that. You know, I'm so proud because if it wasn't for them even making a way for me you know, to be able to do what I'm doing today, you know, I wouldn't be here. And so I just, you know, just thinking about how powerful like my grandmother and my mother and all of the women in my family are, that's just motivation for me, and really to tap more into my femininity and just know that it's so fluid. Because again, you know, my mama carried a lot of weight on her shoulders, a lot of weight that even men are supposed to be carrying. And I think that's inspiring. So, hey.
Thank you so much for that, Blossom. Gia, Lucky, do either of you have any thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I just, considering what feminine may be considered to be, you know, like focused on people and quality of life and nurturing aspect. But I think people don't realize that, you know, a feminine person can be assertive, can be focused on goals and success, can even be competitive. I think those qualities that are attributed to most masculine folks, with the assumption that those experiences aren't feminine. And when feminine people show these type of qualities, they're deemed aggressive or a masculine, with a masculine tone underneath. So I think understanding that the human condition involves so many emotions and so many different experiences that aren't limited to this binary experience. I think once people can understand that you can go through all these varied experiences and presentations, then you kind of can then acknowledge things that are indeed feminine about you. And I think going through that journey as an androgynous youngster, where, you know, being androgynous as a child, I kind of allowed people to assume my gender for me. And based off how they treated me, I understood how people perceive what feminine is and how it should be treated versus how people treat someone who assumed is masculine, right? And so I think with that understanding of like how people respond to femininity is it allowed me to understand that I can be assertive, but I can also be nurturing. I can be I can present with makeup and put on my war mask and ready for that experience, or I cannot. You know, this experience of social distancing has made me shave less, right? But it's and so I don't see the act of shaving as masculine or feminine. I don't see hair growth as masculine or feminine, but I do understand that putting on a lip and having my hair down will be accepted as feminine. And I choose that because that's what makes me happy. And so at the end of the day, your femininity makes you happy and is contributing to a healthy mental well-being, then that is what femininity is to you.
Lucky, what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
how has your definition of femininity changed, or has it changed?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. And it's funny because when I was transitioning, like even prior to like medical transition, there wasn't anything feminine, quote unquote, about me, right? Except for those different traits, the compassion and all of those things. As I started to move through my manhood, I realized that those feminine traits, anybody can hold them, right? And it depends on like how it comes across and what that looks like. And to speak to everyone that's talking about, like some folks who feel like if a feminine energy is the one that's protective or that's, you know, holding these masculine traits, they're seen as aggressive. For me, like, I had my feminine energy protect me, right? She was my protector. She was all of those things for me. And even in you know, like now as an adult, but even prior to medical transition, my feminine self was it was the person that made me. So everything that is me is informed by my feminine presentation, or that person that I grew into. You know what I mean? So like all of the things that are feminine or masculine, for me, they're just two words that really don't mean too much, because I've asked quite a few people, like, what is masculine to you, they can only give you a list of traits, right? And those traits can be given to men or women or feminine or masculine, but anybody can hold those traits regardless of whether they are one or the other or both or whatever that looks like for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your responses. So my next question is really into kind of dive into something that happened when Luckie and I did our Defining Masculinity panel. And it was the idea of, or the concept of how to ask questions. So obviously for people who are never introduced to who they think is a trans individual, there's always these questions that normally cis people have, or, just people who are not aware or around the community. And so how do you guys deal with a person who may have a question that they think is important as it pertains to trans women, i.e., like, did you have bottom surgery? Are you on her? Like those type of questions. How do you navigate those when they come about? And is there a difference? Do you often, how do I phrase this? I want to know how you navigate those questions, but I also want to know, have you gotten to a point where those types of questions just completely turn you off? Or are you able to disseminate a person that's really just genuinely trying to get some education?
Let's make a distinction between education and curiosity.
Yes.
I think that's, again, where you begin with before you respond. Or there's no obligation to respond, first of all.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that distinction of hearing their tone and how they're questioning you, and what is necessary, what is a need to know basis for them and you navigating your safety in that said environment, right? And so once you kind of establish those things and think that you're in a space to respond, and we're talking about someone who's saying, oh, you look very pretty, I would have known, and what's going on with your body, what's going on down there, right? Those are three different questions, but usually they're on that same train of thought, right? And so in my experience, I will say that I navigate professionalism with a feminine presentation, in the sense that I present myself as feminine as possible in professional settings to establish that I am a woman of color and I'm not here to mess around. And it allows that notion of what people already understand to be a professional woman be kind of established in that space, right? And so if I'm in a professional setting and people are wondering, or people are commenting, oh my goodness, you're so pretty, or you're so, I wouldn't have noticed, I usually will be able to respond with a challenging question in the sense of like, oh, what makes you say that? Or I'm no pretty than any other woman in this room, or thank you for saying that, but I hope you look at me as your peer and as your contemporary. But if it's a more personal environment that isn't professional, I kind of drop that facade and go, well, why are you telling me this? Are you hitting on me? Are you telling me I'm pretty because you have interest in me? What's going on here? And so I think when you question someone's intent, they kind of go back to a space where they're treating you more consciously rather than an unfiltered line of questioning that's too personal.
Thank you so much for that.
For me, and Gia kind of alluded to this a little bit too, I think it depends on like the time and the place and the space, because it gets very, very murky, and especially like in health settings, I understand like having more of that conversation about, for medical health purposes about, body parts and stuff like that. But then, there are some people who truly, truly do want to understand the trans experience. But I always tell them at the same time, you also have to do the research on your own as well. I can definitely support you if you have any questions after you've first gone and engaged with yourself, with getting to know and learn. Because there's a lot of people, because whenever you go into a lot of these spaces, you can tell people that have learned, that are trying to learn. And I love helping those types of people. And if I see someone that is exhibiting problematic behavior, whether they are consciously aware of it or not, I do kind of pull them over to the side and try to let them know, hey, you can't access around a trans person. You can't do that, okay? Because I understand you're good people, but to the other average person that may identify as trans, they don't see you that way. And so I need to help you out. I want you to be very clear that what you're saying or what you're asking is not correct for the most part. Also, I'm not gonna lie to you again, depending on the time, place, and the space, I'll clap back. I will definitely clap back in a minute. I will clap back in a minute because it's like, first of all, you wouldn't ask a cis woman what's between her legs. You won't ask a cis man what's between his legs. Like you wouldn't do that. So how dare you ask a trans person what they have between their legs? And I work in sexual health, and so it's really interesting, because I've gotten a couple of questions from curious people that want to know what's it like to have sex with a trans person. I'll be like, oh, it's good. It's really good. Thanks. And I'll give you just that much. So that's when I clap back. Okay. I'll give you all that. But, it gets really, really murky because at the same time, we do want to educate people, but also if it's work. And we need to get paid for this work, okay? It's work having to say over and over again our life experience. It's work. It's definitely work. And, if you're not going to pay us for this work, then, it's not worth it. And so it just really depends.
I don't, when it depends on how do you deal with and navigate the weird questions. So I think that, and from my experience, I work off of energy. So it doesn't matter with your shadow coming around the wall, the way how you present yourself. If I feel your energy is malicious, I'm going to handle you there and then. If I feel like your weird questions are actually a sense of coming from a one-on-one, I would definitely explain to you. I don't do one-on-ones, I do 1,000s. And for me here to sit and tell you my story, that means that you are about to get an invoice from me. I am not here to ever sit and talk about my story without even getting paid from a stranger. And when I say strangers, it goes into community also, because community is the first folks that will out you in a minute, that they would tell society who you are. A lot of folks don't realize that a lot of hatred, a lot of discrimination, and a lot of stigma come from within the community of itself. And basically, when I get weird questions I get 21 questions like R. Kelly after I try to tell my story, and then people wanted to ask you questions. And that's when I stop you there and then. I am not the one to do a teachable moment to individuals that come and answer questions. I have people walk in my office and say, oh, are you? Anytime you begin and ask a question, are you? That means you're confused, you don't know, or you're just curious. And depend on it, if I'm being paid, whether I am at sex worker mode or anything of that nature, whatever you're looking for, I may deliver to you. So basically, I handle weird questions the best way how come to me. If I'm in a professional setting and I'm dealing with an intake or whatever, I allow those folks to know that you came to my office for help. I don't think that is appropriate for me to answer those questions. Now, to have a person confide in you and do a teachable moment with patience, I can disclose, but I know when there's a time, a place to disclose, because depending on the energies I'm getting, if it's a malicious or if it's support the person looking for. So it can be kind of tricky. It can be actually kind of tricky where I'm concerned, because at times I am really deemed to be shady. I am really deemed to that. That's how people perceive me, because I would not tell a person like, "Oh, are you?" And I could act very defiant. If I'm traveling out in society, why are you having a conversation like that with me? Why are we having all these other conversations when we can actually have these conversations on the phone and stuff like that? When strangers have to ask me anything about top, bottom, or anything of that nature, the only way a person can ask me what's between my legs is if you're going to be sleeping with me, if you're going to be with me. So don't discuss what's between my legs. And that's how I am. Take it how they want it, but don't question me about anything. And one of the things I do when it comes to any surgical procedures now, I always have an experience of a story for myself where my surgical procedures are concerned, to let individuals know I am not different from that individual over there that had surgical procedures. However, I may relate to what kind of procedures. And you got to know how to ask those questions. You don't ever ask a personal trans experience about what's between your legs. Did you have?
Uh-oh, we lost Kim.
Sorry, did you change your name? What was your name before? You know, those kind of things. Those are all the weird questions that you get, and that's not kosher. And that's not even good to ask any of those questions. And I do a lot of training around that. So I'm always prepared. Now, I'm a very humorous person. I love to laugh, and a lot of people don't get to see me laugh. Well, got to see me laugh. I think Blossom got to see me laugh also. A lot of people don't really get to see me laugh. And if you really want to key, and if you want to carry, I could carry with you. I could carry with you at the point that you walk away more confused and more ignorant of when you approach me. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Miss Kim, I love you on so many levels. I love you on so many levels right now. I will say though, you know, obviously
Yeah.
I don't have a trans experience to own.
Okay.
But I do understand the.
I can't hear her.
Uh-oh, can you hear me? Uh-oh. One of the things that I can relate to is this idea of becoming tokenized. And that's one thing that I think that people really need to understand, specifically as it pertains to someone's trans experience. Like, I am not your token information. You know, I used to have a lot of straight friends that I was their only gay friend, so I became their token gay encyclopedia. I have a lot of, you know, I used to have a lot of friends that were not of color, and so I became their Blackican encyclopedia because I'm Black and Mexican. So they want to know, you know, well, what is this Black reference, and what is, you know, what's about this Latin? And I'm look. Now I might be mixed with both, but I didn't grow up with both cultures. Like, this is my experience, this is what it is. But I'm not here to be your token, and I think that. That's something that I really think that people need to just get into their body, is that I'm not entitled to your personal information, not having a personal relationship with you. And I think a lot of the questions that come across about, like, have you medically transitioned? You know, do you still have this, or do you have? That's not a hello type of question. That's not a how are you doing? How are you doing? So do you still have a penis? I mean, that's just not part of the conversation. And I think that people really they get life messed up, you know, in those avenues where they think like, oh, you are this token trans person that should have all of the answers, and I am entitled to these answers. I am entitled to your story. I am entitled to knowing about your experience. And that's such a dangerous space to be. And it leads me into my next question to all of you. Knowing that there are people that carry that energy, we know that that energy can grow and become violent. we know that that energy can grow and become very invasive. How do you, as trans women living a trans experience, where do you find your strength when you come across stories where that entitlement has cost a sister her life, or has cost someone, you know, just cost them in a violent way? Like, where do you walk out into the world and go, you know what, I know that this is happening, but I still have a life to live?
I like that last little part. Can you repeat that last little part that you just said? That last small little sentence you just said.
About having a life to live?
Exactly. Yeah, because let me tell you something. Because let me back it up a little bit. Because you made a very powerful point about tokenization, and it's so interesting because we've all been some kind of a token at one point, but at the same time, what I've learned is how to play the game. I've learned to play the game. There have been some times when I have been the token, but in that tokenization, I've learned to benefit from it. Benefiting means you're going to pay me for the information that I'm going to teach you. You're going to pay me because I have bills to pay. I have things of that. I have a responsibility for that. But going into, like, when it gets to the point of it, people being murdered, um, for me as just an activist, I get angry. Yes, I do, but it's also it fuels me. It fuels my energy because at the same time, I have privilege. I have a lot of privilege, whether I want to admit this or not. And I have a certain responsibility when I get to go into some of these very rich white spaces to start holding people accountable as well as myself. Because I'm thinking about that girl that just lost her life, that trans woman that's on the street right now, dealing with substance abuse, dealing with all of these other isms. I'm thinking about her. And so it's just like, Blossom, how dare you go into this space? How dare you go into that space and you're not being active? Like, you're not. And the thing is, though, and I can admit this because I've healed from it. And once you've healed and once you've evolved, it's okay to talk about it. And so the thing is, for those of us that do have some kind of have some kind of access and privilege, you have to kind of ask yourself, what are you doing? What are you really, really doing in these spaces? Like, are you really, really a part of the solution, or are you more a part of the problem? And for years, I was part of the problem, didn't even know it. And so I had to figure out how to switch that and really turn it into learning how to play the game. Okay. Like, really, really learning the rules of the game and learning how to play in it. And it's funny because I was talking with one of my influencer friends, and she's one of the, she's a YouTube star, and she's always one of the ones that's always the only black person in the room. Like, they got to have that one tokenized black person, and that goes for me too. And we were just talking about how we've learned to make it work for us, how we've learned to carry in an entire community on our back to make it work. Because again, sometimes it's gonna take that one person. Not everybody likes to run in packs. Not everybody in that pack even wants you in the pack. So a lot of us have to go out on our own and try to find our way. And so it's just like, this us versus them situation, I hate, especially within the trans community, period. I hate it. I really, really hate the us versus them situation because it's like, you know, this person has this, but because this person has this person feels like they're going to shrink because this other person has something that could help. And I wish we get out of that mentality altogether. I was literally just talking about this yesterday with a trans sister. And I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I really hate this us versus them situation. And so it's just like, if we're able to come together, we realize that we have so much power, so much abundance right here together. And we could do so much. And, I just feel like because we're in this system that puts us against each other, competing for crumbs, because that's all it is, it's crumbs. I think that's where we get lost. And so, I'm just holding myself accountable when I go into those spaces for my trans sisters, my trans brothers, and, siblings that are being killed out in these streets. They don't have anything.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Blossom. I think to add to that, I have to remind myself that I am not so far removed from former experiences. My transition or my introduction to our community was through being a showgirl and performing in the early 2000s at some staples here locally. And so navigating a survival mindset and period in my life, living out of my car and things like that, I acknowledge those experiences in survival and know that I'm not so far removed, even though I'm living a very privileged life now. And so when I love the quote, walk like there's 1,000 ancestors right behind you. And I kind of live with that quote in saying that our community of lost siblings through violence or of their own hand, those experiences are with all of us. And so in times where I've been living in survival, living in privilege, or just living in a space where I'm questioning my own existence and worth, I place value in gratefulness and practicing gratitude and knowing that I'm breathing, I'm alive, and I can take that and walk with pride, knowing that I'm still here and I can, with every breath I take, I can fight for affirming my own self.
Thank you, Gia, for that. I feel like one of the things that has been a blessing working with Trans Connections has been the knowledge that I've been able to observe and to gain, being a cisgender male who is gay and still a feminine. I still am feminine presenting, and it's often assumed that I am a trans woman because of my feminine presentation. But one of the things that has been a true blessing is really understanding that so many of the ideologies that have been pushed into us, that have kind of been, syringed into our DNA, are so not what they need to be, and they are able to be removed. Things like we were talking earlier about certain questions, what to ask, what not to ask, what am I entitled to, what am I not entitled to, what is my work versus, what are conversations that I need to be having, who can I have that conversation with? And it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy this Defining Trans series that Luckie and Trans Connections is doing, because it allows for people to understand that, yes, there are differences. Yes, there are ignorances. Yes, there are ways that every one of us can be better. We can evolve, but there are so many similarities that I think, as just a community, as an LGBTQ community, as a trans community, as communities of color, that we simply skip over and act like they don't exist. You know what I'm saying? You're a human being. I'm a human being. Can we start there? Let's just start there. Let that be the foundation. We have about maybe 5 more minutes before we end this live, and I do want to get some of the questions from the comments. We do have one question from Coffee Black, comment/question. Coffee says, I agree that your private parts are yours, that those are inappropriate questions. I would like to know, why is there so much hate within the trans community? Well, I'll start here. Being not trans, I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of hate within the community. I think that's a narrative that has definitely been spun, but I don't think that it's any different than any other community that we can talk about. And Blossom, you spoke to this just a few moments ago about how there are so many microaggressions again, that are embedded and syringed into our communities, where we pit one against the other. We pit the trans man against the trans woman. We pit the dark-skinned person against the light-skinned person. And I don't think that's specific to the trans community. I think that's specific to communities that are not in governmental power like they should be. I'm trying not to be as political as I want to be on this APLA health page, but you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying, because I'm still representing my organization, right? But I don't necessarily think, I think that's a narrative that has been put out into the world to stop the trans community from growing and evolving and gaining the rights and things that the trans community deserves. But that's just one cisgender person's observation. What do you guys have to say to that?
I'd like to say that we are products of cis heteronormative system, this patriarchal capitalism, right? And so a lot of the experiences our community finds ourselves marginalized, you know, with inequitable access to different things. I think we internally in our own community project a lot of those frustrations onto each other, whether it is conformity, passability, economic status, you know, fighting once again, as Blossom said, for those scraps. You know, where a trans woman's agency is limited based off of the systems that she wants to conform to. And I think when you're playing the rules of a game that isn't set up for you, you are going to be projecting a lot of frustration onto now someone who is seen as a competition, because you are vying for those scraps. And so, as Ms. Kim says, we have to uplift ourselves and create our own tables. And I think that's a place to begin with, so that you can have that kind of inclusive space, so you can have that well-adjusted background to share space with your siblings, versus leaving them in the dust for the little bits of progress that you may find for yourself. Right. So I think our hate within our own community stems from just being considered at the bottom of that totem pole, and not seeing the world in a vast, more expansive experience that is there for you as a human person, if you want to navigate other systems than the one that's putting you down.
Thank you, Gia.
To the question, I don't see it as hatred. I see a lot of things that speaks to the narrative, or folks that looking inside or within themselves about hatred. I see a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma that a lot of individuals have been through and was told you coulda, you shoulda, and you would never be. You know, those kind of things. And until individuals understand what your story is all about, how could you say that I'm a hater? How could you say there's any kind of hatred when you're not even trying to get to know my story? You don't know what kind of triggers that I'm holding on to. I might walk into a room and it could be a trans event. However, do you think that I may feel good being there, good with my presence, or do you think that I could feel lonely? I could feel lonely. I could claim, okay, this is the community that I'm supposed to be. And on the outside, when I walk away from this, I am walking alone. I'm going to take the car alone. I'm coming home by myself alone. I'm doing things as a regular human being. So I don't see why anybody will look outside themselves and think that there's any hatred. I think that all of us have experienced trauma. Some of us know how to heal and handle it. Some of us know how to deal with a therapist, and because mental health is real, some of us would think and lash back on each other. So when you see a lot of individuals in cliques keying or lashing out at each other, it's not hatred. It's people yearning to be loved, people learning and begging to be loved and to be embraced. And I think that we can possibly or recommend that hatred to turn into love, and how we pour love into communities, and how different it looks when we pour love into communities, because I'm not using the word love loosely. So when it comes to that word hatred, um, that's not part of from my experience, that's not part of my um vocabulary. I know for at times I can be very aggressive. I can, let's say, assertive, and I can be very dominant because I have a dominant presence. And folks may think that that's being shady, that's being hatred, or whatever the case may be. I don't see it as that. I just know that some will like me and some will dislike me. I cannot make everyone like me. So that means if we claim that in the trans community there's hatred, that means in society there's a larger globe of hatred carrying on. So I don't see it. I see it as trauma. Everybody has their own individual trauma, and we heal differently as we go through our own paths and spiritualities. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. My last question for all of you that I would like to hear your words on. One of the things that Trans Connections has really done and promoted and kind of revamped our approach to the trans community is really has been getting people to understand that we are a trans program that supports the entire spectrum of transness. We support trans men, trans women, non-binary, gender non-conforming, but we've also included a fifth group of people, which is those people in discovery. And we have found that there are a lot of young, especially younger people coming up that know for certain that they are not cisgender, but they've yet to identify themselves on the trans spectrum. But my question for you guys is, what are your words to the generation of trans people coming after you? What encouragement, what words of wisdom do you give to them as they battle some of the same things that you guys have battled in your journeys, as they face maybe some new things that you did not have to battle in your journeys? What are some words of encouragement and wisdom that you can give to the next generation of trans folks?
Can I jump in there right quick, Daniel?
You can jump and double Dutch all you want to,
I just want to uplift our intersex folks that also identify on the trans spectrum. A lot of times they're left out too. So we want to definitely not leave anybody out. I definitely want to just, speak them into the room. So, but while we're here, right?
I mean, while you got the mic or whatnot.
While I have the mic, I would definitely just tell the next generation, one, like, respect your elders. Okay, we went through a lot to get here. Okay, so let's start there, right? But real deal, like you're okay. Like, what you're going through is not out of the norm. It's not. It doesn't. I mean, it makes you weird in the best way. Individuality and uniqueness is something that folks should really hold close. And a lot of folks are so quick to jump into the newest trends, or so quick to jump into like what's the new fad and all. And I got to be like the next person, right? It's okay to be an individual, and that should be held high, and have that respect for yourself to be an individual.
Thank you, Luckie.
Thank you for saying that, Luckie. Danyol, you definitely kind of answered that in your own question. It's a spectrum, it's a journey, and I think your biggest hurdle will be yourself. In what you may see as expectations, and put yourself in a box. And just know that this spectrum and this journey is all yours and yours alone. And there's a wealth of information, a huge community of siblings to relate with and to connect to. And so I think what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of tools that people can utilize, and there's a lot of time. Your transition is your own, and as someone who uses she, her, hers, and they, them, their pronouns, and someone who is not have not medically transitioned, I can say that my journey has been up and down and full of lessons that I've had to relearn. But allow yourself to listen to yourself and feel what's right, because you will know what feels right for you.
Thank you, Gia, so much for that. Blossom, we cannot hear. Well, I can't hear Blossom. Can anybody else hear Blossom? Uh-oh. We can hear you, Blossom. Okay, well, while we while we get ready for that, I think that Miss Kim is coming back on. Y'all give us some grace. Just know that we are doing this virtual reality thing, and of course, technical difficulties happen. And I'm sure most of you in this quarantine time have figured out technology goes down every now and again.
Right,
So
it happens.
we want to make sure that we acknowledge that. Miss Kim, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. What are your words for the next generation of trans folks?
I just want folks that coming on to the next generation, I just want to tell them, when we experience suffering in life, both mentally and physically, we will become stronger. That is why, if to you as a young person with no, you will become much more as a greater human being, and it must always seek the idea or seek life. To put that in much more better terms is that be an individual, be who you are, believe in yourself, love yourself, because there's no one else who's going to love you if you don't love yourself. And take it slow, do your research. Every trans person does not have to medically transition. Every trans person does not have to have surgeries. Every trans person does not have to identify on the same binary. Just be you. Just be human.
Honey, I felt that Lena Horne, the Wiz spirit. Come on, believe in yourself. Yes, believe in yourself right from the start, honey. Yes, I'm here for it. Blossom. Thank you, Miss Kim, for those words. Blossom. Blossom, I am so sorry. Blossom gives us love. Blossom gives us love. I'm going to put you guys in the, first of all, I want to say thank you all so much for being here today, for tuning in. As you can, have you seen the scrolls across the bottom of the screen? I want to give a shout out to where you can find all of these wonderful individuals online. Invisible Men, you can find them on IG at Invisible Trans Men. If you are looking for Miss Gia Ryan, you can find her at Gia Libra. Shout out to the Libras. I'm a Taurus, but that's okay. Shout out to y'all. If you are looking for Miss Blossom C. Brown, you can find her on IG as well at Blossom C. Brown. She keeps it simple, honey, but sometimes simple is all you need. And of course, if you are looking for Miss Kim Watson, you can find her on IG at Community Kinship Life. I'm going to put you guys backstage. Don't go anywhere. We are going to have a post-show talk, but I do want to get in this live. But thank you guys so much for being a part. I'm going to put you backstage. Don't go anywhere, and then we'll reconvene. Thank you all so much for watching. I lost my necklace, but it's okay. Things happen. It's live. This is live TV. I want to thank you all so much for watching and tuning in today for the Defining Femininity panel. As you've heard in the discussion, these are conversations that we need to be having. These are conversations that we need to be pushing and that we need to be educating ourselves about. I think some of the takeaways from this conversation is educate yourself. Don't walk into a situation, into anyone's life, whether they be trans, gay, Black, Asian, whatever their experience is. Don't walk into that experience with them thinking that you're entitled to their story and entitled to who they are and where they've been. It's okay to ask appropriate questions. It's okay to ask respectful questions, but make sure that you have a foundation of a personal relationship with them before you just think that, oh, I want to know these things. As Gia said, and as Kim, all of them have said, there's a huge difference between education and curiosity. So please stay tuned. Make sure that you are following at Trans Connections on all of our social media. If you are interested in our Tuesday night Zoom conference calls where we get together and support one another. If you're a trans person of color between the ages of 18 and 29 and you need a support on Tuesday nights, we are in Zoom having a conversation, checking in on each other. So please come join us. You can hit us up either in the DMs, or you can text us at the number scrolling across the bottom of your screen, 323-628-3996. Of course, if you are in need of STD treatment during this time of COVID-19 and this quarantine, please make sure you check out aplahealth.org for the nearest clinic near you that is still doing STD treatment. We are not doing HIV and STD testing, obviously for social distancing reasons, but we still are offering treatment options. So if you need treatment, if you're itching, if you're burning, if you're leaking, if you feel like you got something, make sure you hit up our website and get that information. Outside of that, I want to give a shout out to all of our in-house APLA Health Prevention Department programs, Unique Brothers United, Healthy Him, 10, Proyecto Impacto or Mente, Project T&D, as well as Partywise and Red Circle Project. Again, if you want to know about these programs, what they offer, and the services that they offer specifically in this time of quarantine, visit our website at aplahealth.org. Outside of that, I will see you guys on Thursday, live at 5, right here on the APLA Health Prevention page. Again, thank you so much for watching. Like, share, and comment. Hey, honey, we still read the comments in the replay. Make sure you share this with your friends, your family, your enemies, your people that you don't like, because they still need this education. Okay, so share the link, share it out, put it out to the people, let the people know. All right, I'm your boy, Danyol, Jaye, Outreach Specialist for Trans Connections, and you guys have an amazing rest of your evening. Make sure you stay safe, stay sanitary, and love on each other. See you next time.